right, we are here to learn how to make a couple of projects from textured slab. So the first thing we're going to make is a spoon rest. So I've made a few of these. I've made actually a bunch of these over the years, and they're great to have at your house, and they're great to give as gifts. You just rest your spoon here. It's got a little divot on the end. So you can sit basically a small spoon, a serving spoon, a cooking spoon, whatever you want. They've got this great texture on them. It's also a good way to test out your glazes. So let's get some clay. Don't forget to prep your clay. If you roll out a slab, always let your slab dry out. It's very important. Dry your slabs out. And then I'm going to go ahead and roll some texture on it. So I can use any kind of texture I want. You guys can use rollers. I've got a couple of different rollers. You can use flat textures, and I think I'm going to use the flat textures today, so I'm going to go ahead and use this guy. I just need enough for a 6-inch cookie cutter, so that'll be perfect, right? I'm going to set that on there, and I'm going to roll pretty strong. I don't want to leave any of this design out. I want it all to transfer, and I want it to transfer really great. Like, I want deep texture so that my glaze will sit in that texture beautifully. So make sure you stand up and roll really hard. I don't roll to the edge because I don't want a hard edge, but that looks pretty good. Boom. All right, always release your clay. And then we're going to go ahead and take our cookie cutter. Please don't forget to clean your cookie cutters. I find these full of clay pretty often. It's not that difficult to clean. And I'm going to decide where I want to set this. That's kind of cool right there. So I'm going to go ahead and push it down, give it a wiggle, and release it. All right. We always want to smooth our edges. I've got texture on this, so I'm going to use my finger so I don't smooth out my texture. A little bit of water, go a long way. I'm going to flip it, and I can use my sponge on this side because I had a little bit of texture on the other side of that clay, so I'm just smoothing it out. I don't have any texture on this side, so I can go ahead and use my sponge on this side. Works really nicely. There we go. All right, pick it up gently. Now we're going to get a foam square and set this circle on there. And I'm going to use my 4.5-inch plate form from G&R Pottery. Set it in the center. And what I do to make sure that this is centered is I turn it. It's nice when you have an overhead camera because you can see it, but I turn it and try and make sure that I am centered. Let's see, that's pretty good. Look from above. All right. Am I good? One last look-see, and then I'm gonna, let's see, hold on. No, not quite. All right, push down and roll. Down and roll. I'm gonna flip it. Turn on a banding wheel. And now I'm going to use my red rib. First I'm going to use this stamp sponge. You don't want to use a sponge if your clay is pretty wet, but this clay I rolled out a couple weeks ago, so it's pretty dry. You're going to go around with your rib, hit the top, You don't want to put a lot of stress on this edge because it will break. Here we go. Once it's well formed, you're going to want to leave it on there for a little bit until it dries. Mine, like I said, is pretty dry, my clay, so I'm going to go ahead and flip it over now and give it another little softening of the edges. Again, be careful not to get rid of your texture. You don't want to smooth your texture out. So this could make a cute little plate. This could just be left as is for a cute little plate. You want to push your bottom, your base down so it doesn't bow. You could absolutely leave this as is. Or you can make it a spoon rest. Your spoon rest has a little dip right there for the handle of your spoon. So I'm going to decide where I want that divot to be, and I think I want it to be here. I'm going to wet my hands a little bit. There's my water. Just wet your hands a little bit. With your left, this is assuming you're right-handed, you're going to hold it with your index finger and your thumb, and then you're gently going to start pushing down with your index finger of your left hand, making a little mouth. You want it wide enough. Remember, your clay is going to shrink. You want it wide enough that it's going to fit the handle of a large spoon if you decide to use a large spoon. Give it a little shape. Make sure you're smooth. And that's going to dry just like that. Look at how much it shrinks. Once again, this is 13% shrinkage on B-Mix Smooth that we use in the studio. This will get covered with plastic and left alone to dry. That's it. Don't forget to put your name and period on the back. All right, we are here to learn how to make one of these wall votives. So these are pretty cool. They have beautiful texture on them, and they hang on your wall. You can put a little votive candle or an air plant in here. They're super sweet. I've got these hanging all over my porch. So I've got just this leftover slab, and as long as it fits this, we're good to go. So this is Slab Heart Bowl, it says on it, but I am going to also write Slab Wall Votive on it. Because there it's multi-purpose. There we go. So I've written that on there now too. And it tells you how many pounds you need, 3 pounds. If you're just going to make this, I'm going to just use, I have a scrap of clay. So I'm just going to use a slab of clay. I don't know how much it weighs, but I'm just going to go ahead and use it. And let's see, this roller is almost big enough. I think I'm going to use this one instead because I think it'll be a little bit better textural. I'm standing over here on the end, and the key to rolling with these rollers is you want to stand up, you want to roll from the barrel, and you want to roll away from you. So there we go. Once you've rolled it, look at that. Texture is super nice. Release your clay from the board, and I'm ready to cut. Very nice. So it's stretched it a little bit. You can see that now I have plenty of room. So I'm going to begin my cut. I always use a straight edge so that I get a nice straight cut. Put it right on the edge of your template. And I'm walking my fingers so that the straight edge does not move. Right. One last one. Walking my fingers. There we go. Scraps are going to go into the pug mill. This is such an easy project, and it's a super cute project. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little water on my finger. I'm not going to use my sponge to smooth my edge because I don't want it to get rid of my texture, so I'm just using my finger right now. But please do not forget to soften your edges before you construct, always in clay. This texture is super cool. I'm loving it. I don't think I've used this one before. Super into it. I'm going to bring you guys down a little bit more. There we go. I'm going to flip it over and soften my edges on the other side. This time I can use a sponge because this side does not have texture. Alright, so once I'm there, this clay that I'm using right now has sat. It's a pretty hard slab. So I'm going ahead and going to construct with it right now, right away. If you guys roll your clay out that same day, then you'll have to let it dry for about, you'll have to let it dry for about 20 to 30 minutes. So this is going to connect like this. You don't even have to bevel it at all. It's just going to connect edge to edge. So both of those edges will need a little slip and score. And a little water. I did wet my scoring tool, but I added a little water. I just I'm smoothing this exterior connection, trying really carefully not to mess with my texture. And then I'm going to use a paintbrush. You want to create kind of a teardrop. I'm going to use a paintbrush to get in here and connect that seam really well, as well as a rubber tip tool. Very gently, I'm going to flip this guy over so that I can smooth that connection as well. Use a paintbrush, a rubber tip tool, and I think I'm also going to give it a little tiny coil. So I'm going to roll a tiny coil. Tiny coil. I'm going to wet my fingers because tiny coils dry out really, really quickly. And I'm just going to put this coil in here because I don't want this to come apart. And it's the only connection, so I really want to make sure that it's strong and it doesn't want to pull apart. So see, I'm holding the edge and I'm just smoothing in here. I'm going to use this rubber tip tool to really push that coil in and have it disappear 100%. You don't want to see it at all. Paintbrush, and there it goes. It's gone. Gone. Very carefully flip it over. Make sure the other side is also smoothed out well. Make sure you're holding this edge, this point, really important. All right, and then we just shape it. Just see how this has a really kind of nice, let's move this over a little bit. This one has a really nice kind of teardrop shape, so I want the same. And I want to flatten this bottom so that it can stand. It can have a votive standing in the center. So pretending that this is a votive, you can sit it right in here like that. A votive is those little candles, like a tea light. And they have, giving it a little bit of body, they have those battery operated ones that are really nice that you can put in there so you can have it in your room and not worry about fires. So make sure it's shaped really nicely and you're happy with this shape before you put plastic on it. And that the bottom is nice and flat. So you can see how much clay shrinks. This is good to go now, so I'm going to just go ahead and put plastic on it and let it dry slowly. Boom, all done.